Hey, good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this TeamLease industry dialogue where we'll have the opportunity to exchange ideas, insights, and experiences related to our sector. This dialogue is a great opportunity for us to come together, share our knowledge, and collaborate to find innovative solutions and common ground essentially for the challenges that we all face. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Chandrasekhar Tripathi, AVP and Head HR of Unibic Foods India Private Limited. Thank you so much for taking time out to join us today, Chandra.
Thank you, Bala Subramanian, and thank you, TeamLease, for inviting me. Pleasure to be here.
Indian biscuit market essentially is expected to reach about $12 billion in the next 4 years' time. India's biscuit market is projected to grow significantly, and the organized biscuit market revenues will definitely surpass the 400 billion mark this year itself, 400 billion rupees that is. The growth will be driven by factors which include changes in consumers, evolving taste preferences, increased demand for snacks, and increased health awareness as well among consumers, which is where Unibic comes into the picture. In India, biscuits are an extensively consumed food item. It's an essential aspect of the culture and lifestyle of our populace. Changes in lifestyle and the premiumization of biscuits, such as sugar-free biscuits, cereals biscuits, wheat biscuits, and multigrain biscuits, have attracted consumers to these items. In addition to consumers' taste preferences, the demand for convenience foods and health and wellness concerns and several other factors are also anticipated to drive the market over the forecast period. In addition, an improved distribution network, omni-channel distribution, as it's so called these days, attractive packaging, well, as they say, premiumization is the new sachetization. Yeah, will all contribute to the overall expansion of the biscuit industry. Additionally, promotional advertisements for biscuits attract a very large number of young children and adolescents who would go on to become repeat purchasers in the future as well, which would actually contribute to the cash cow pool of any organization in this space. Unibic Foods now specifically is known for its wide range of biscuits and snacks and has established itself as a successful player in the Indian market. So having said this, once again, I extend a warm welcome to Mr. Chandrasekhar Tripathi. Just a bit more background about him. He's been at Unibic for close to a year now, and he comes from an academic background of an engineering degree in electronics and communication with an MBA specifically in HR management. He has worked in a diverse set of organizations, which include FMCG companies like ITC, Marico, and also logistics companies like AP Moller, Maersk, and now he's been with Unibic for close to a year. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, Chandra. So specifically, today's event is going to touch upon the pressing topic of workforce planning and talent acquisition strategies and approach that various companies follow, and what specifically your take on this is across the various organizations that you have worked with, and what is it that you're looking to do in the future as well. To begin with, Chandra, how does Unibic Foods identify its workforce requirements and align them with its business objectives? What strategies or processes are in place to ensure effective workforce planning?
So, I think our workforce requirements has to follow the business context, and the business context is that we have seen rapid growth over the last few years, and hence, the scale up has been quite fast. So, in terms of our requirement, we need to balance the long term, which is to add capability which will help us maintain, that high CAGR of growth, but at the same time deliver the here and now, which is to ensure that year on year we have, we meet the numbers and we are profitable. So, how do you empower the HR team itself, but more importantly the business leaders to balance and understand what is the long term capability, invest in it. But at the same time, we cannot sort of take a pause and say, I'll just invest in capability. But how do you get the right workforce to deliver the here and now that's needed? And it's a nuanced and very delicate balance that you get in, because you will need to add capability, but at the same time you cannot upset the apple cart too much for it to be disruptive. So building that understanding, building that awareness or projection of where the business would be, and then empowering the leaders to take that call. That's I think very important. The other thing which I think we do differently and which has kept us in good stead is we've sort of empowered again our business leaders and cascaded it down for them to have accountability on their team and different metrics like even cost. So, if there is a certain manpower that you have and the quality and cost is ultimately your accountability, then you look at your function and your area and your territory as a mini P&L unit, and hence you have a much comprehensive and well-rounded view on talent rather than saying get me this, get me that, and using TA as a service function. I think what has also worked is that we are in a, we are in a sort of a specialized industry, and hence the network that we have in terms of our leaders being alumni of certain organizations, institutions, our alumni network of Univic itself, that has served us very well to sort of plow back the talent, that is in some ways ready fit. So I would say between these strategies or these approaches, we've been able to manage and address our capability requirements for both a growing business and sustaining a high growth business.
Got it. Thanks so much for that. And interesting points that you made there, Chandra. I mean, you're talking about, of course, it's very important to make sure that when you're making repairs to the train is still running, right? So it's very difficult to do that. And the other interesting point that you made is that you need to give accountability to the leaders for both quality and the cost and make them run mini P&Ls, right? So how hard or how easy is that to actually get people to take that level of accountability?
So it's I think more than a process, it's a culture thing. It's more about the mindset uh, that is there. So incidentally, Univic has had that mindset, and hence it comes very naturally to our leaders. The task at hand is how do you instill that in, let's say, new leaders or new managers that come on board who may have come from a different context. But it comes naturally. It's been part of how we've grown as an organization, right? Because while we've grown, the focus has always been to ensure that the growth is profitable. So it has come very naturally to us in some ways.
Got it. Fair. No, I completely agree with you that it needs to be ingrained in the culture of the organization to be able to drive this level of accountability. Otherwise, it's probably not going to happen. It's just going to remain a theory, right? So coming to that, to be able to drive this culture, though, it's important for you to be able to attract and importantly retain top talent because biscuits is more than a century old. Organized biscuits itself is more than a century old as an industry in India, and you have some giants to compete with, yeah, who have established their distribution networks over a century. Yeah. So, how are you able to, in that sense, attract and retain top talent to be able to also make sure that they take this level of accountability and drive the business forward?
Sure. So I think the first step is awareness of what our value proposition is as an employer and as a business. Being mindful of your strengths and your limitations both. So, when you say top talent, I would say what's the best fit talent for me and my needs. Right? Now, if I start going and competing with uh, the best paid employer or the most well-known employer, being a relatively upcoming and emerging employer brand, it may not be a winning game for me. Or if I stick to very tried and traditional methods of talent pools, it may not give me enough diversity of inputs of talent that I need today for my business to succeed. So first is I think knowing what your value proposition is, and we have I think few elements that are very unique. First is it's a business that is on a track for high growth, but at the same time its fundamentals are good, it's healthy, it's profitable. But because it's growing very fast, we can afford to provide an accelerated career and also an accelerated learning. And hence, a lot of talent that we have are people who would have stepped into roles much quicker than, let's say, a traditional industry. Right? So that is a very clear value proposition. Having said that, you need to have a certain mindset, which is, have a certain degree of agility, have a certain degree of comfort with ambiguity to succeed in the context and scale that we are in. So individuals who will be comfortable in that setup, who would have a bit of an entrepreneurial mindset, but also balanced process, So those kind of talent would fit well with us. Now, once we've identified what we have to offer and what kind of talent fits, then I think we've opened up avenues across. Right? So today we have people who are very senior, who've been with the organization for 20 years, and we're not looking at phasing them out. We are saying what can be done and how can we leverage their extensive experience. Right? Today we have people, industry veterans who've done their first innings and who've come in with that expertise as a second stint in Unibic. And at the same time, we have very young aspirational talent who are getting opportunities very early in their career, and we are taking punts on them. But all of them have one thing in common. They have all come in the organization, or they've all been in the organization believing in the vision that the organization has, which is of rapid growth and scale up over the next 3 years or 3 or 4 years. As long as that belief is there, the stickiness comes naturally. So I think that is what has worked well. Knowing our value proposition, finding the talent that fits to ensure that there is a mutual stickiness, and then not subscribing to very traditional talent avenues and talent philosophies. Being completely open and merit driven to get the talent from wherever you would, those who fit in that manner. So that has what has worked for us.
Again, I think two things. Thanks so much once again for that. And again, two things that stood out for me. I mean, you're openly saying that it doesn't really make sense for you to go toe to toe with some of the giants and play the same game. You will have to play a different game because the phase at which you are in right now as an organization is very different from the phase that some of your larger and older competitors might be in. So there's no point in hiring the same way that they do, right? Because you need people with a different mindset to come in and think. So that's the first thing that stood out. And secondly, interestingly, you also made a point saying that you have some homegrown talent, which is people who've gotten growth early and also gotten fast growth as well at it. And you also have certain veterans whose first stint may not be Unibic, but who probably worked elsewhere in similar organizations or maybe in the same industry and come in with a wealth of experience which could be leveraged by you. So, I mean, so you have both. You have a mix of both essentially to make sure that you have complete reach across the spectrum. So that actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, you have to play a different game essentially is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not different for the sake of being different. You have to play the game that's relevant to us.
Yeah. No, completely correct. It's because as an organization itself, you are actually in a different phase, and you have to look at things differently rather than take the same approach that's taken by some of the others. Yeah. So when you are actually making a play for acquiring your talent, how do you ensure that you foster a culture of positivity and ensure that these guys get a positive experience right from the get-go? Is there any specific practice or initiative in place to ensure that there is a seamless onboarding and engagement experience for these candidates, especially in the infancy, the first 6 months or so, right? Which I think you yourself passed just now.
I think it's a fairly important issue to address in talent acquisition. I think sometimes it gets deprioritized in the hustle and bustle to get talent. But I think it's very important to ensure that talent gets good experience while engaging with the organization. At one level, you've got all the basic practices and tactical initiatives that need to be there that are, I would say, standard for any progressive companies, be it ensuring that you define the process very well, you have job descriptions that are well laid out, you have good day one experiences, you have well-defined induction so that people settle into the role, and also a bit of look and feel on the organization and, people ensuring that they enjoy the experience of our products, of our brands. But I think that's par for the course. Any progressive organization has those in their TA practices. But I think what's very important besides and beyond this is that you are, as an organization, approachable, transparent, efficient and humane in your approach. So do you and your interviewers respect a candidate's time? Do you and your does your TA process ensure that there is the hiring process is not very protracted and you're respecting the investment that the candidate makes? Are you calling out all the caveats of the role, the structure, what the individual can receive and what will not receive in terms of their career, their learning? Are you calling out at the right time, or you're hiding behind big JDs? Right? Are you available if the candidate needs to reach out? You don't just have a manpower consultant who's available to do the conversations, but can they reach out to their hiring managers? Can they reach out to the recruitment coordinator, for instance, right? So I think that approach is very important. I think somewhere in our TA processes and also for our hiring managers, that mindset is ingrained, which has helped us create a trust and create a differentiation beyond those practices. So, again, I would say transparency, speed, an efficient hiring process, and connect. These are 4 elements that have helped us give that positive experience to candidates beyond the usual par for course practices for any good organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think giving a good vibe about the organization is something that a lot of companies strive to do. But beyond that, as you said, consciously, it's important to make sure that there is speed and clarity, transparency given to the candidate as well. The other term that you used was quite interesting as well, that you should be respectful of the candidate's investment in terms of time that they make towards the organization as well. I think certain organizations are a little flippant about the way they treat interviewees as time. It's almost as if it's an entitlement. I know there are certain companies who where the interviewer may not even show up on time, right? And it's okay if the candidate waits for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or even half an hour or so, because he's the one who needs the job, right? But I don't think that's the right approach, because the companies are also as much on the lookout for good talent as much as the candidate is on the lookout for a good job or a good employer as well. So it's mutual, and I think the respect also has to be a two-way stream, which a lot of companies do not follow. So it's great to hear you say that. Sandra. Thanks so much for that insight. Moving on, I wanted to also understand now, how do you ensure, or what is your outlook about, say, staffing solutions, third-party contract staffing solutions, and how do you think those solutions can align with the evolving needs of different industries, and how do they stay relevant in a constantly changing job market? I mean, let me, or maybe rephrase it. Where do you see a staffing company fitting in? Need not necessarily be just in your company, but overall in your industry or in the larger scheme of things. What are the value additions that you would look for from a staffing company?
I think firstly, important to look at where I would need a staffing solution, and where I would need a third-party staffing. Today, in my value chain, I would have a lot of incidental workforce requirement. These are tasks that are indispensable. But given the nature of talent, given the certainty of my staffing requirements subject to growth plans, expansion plans, and on both ends, and let's say sales and distribution, and on the other end, let's say operations, manufacturing, and all the support functions across the entire value chain. Given the pace at which we're expanding, there would be a need to be flexible in that capacity, both in terms of quantum and how much you would want to redeploy between different elements of the value chain. So there is always a need of flexibility, and more so for a company that is growing rapidly. Also, the level of the talent segment that you engage for this requirement, you would naturally find that there would be a fair amount of churn. So these are talents who have, I would say, more. The relationship would be more transactional with an employer, and because of the opportunities available, the way the economy has opened up and options are there. Typically, this talent segment we've seen is more transactional, and the churn is much higher. Right? And that's where manage the administrative aspects, to manage the costs, and to ensure that I'm agile and nimble enough to manage my demand and capacity of talent. I certainly need a staffing solution. Right, to the extent that a significant portion of my talent need, of my workforce requirement, will have to be serviced through a staffing solution company. Now, the differentiation on one end, I could say a very plain vanilla staffing company would simply do the compliances and do contract management. But I think the differentiation that I'm looking at is, can my staffing partner go beyond that? And one, guarantee a stable talent outflow. Right? If my staffing partner can take care of my sourcing needs, let's say, right? Then that sort of takes away a lot of bandwidth and frees me up for a lot of things. Right? Can my staffing solution look at their entire employee base and look at providing employee experiences from their end, co-designed with the employer, of course, principal employer, but can they take ownership and co-participation in delivering an employee experience beyond just basic compliance? I think that would be a big differentiator for me, because that takes away that bandwidth, gives me that more bandwidth to focus on the core elements of the value chain. So I would say these are two. I could list out a lot, but I think these two elements, if provided by my staffing partner, would be a true differentiator.
Right. I completely understood your first point, which is with respect to taking care of your talent inflow through sourcing. Can you please elaborate a bit more on the second aspect about ownership and co-partner, etc.? I mean, because that sounds very interesting as to, for a fast-growing company in a highly competitive space such as yours, what kind of partnership would you be expecting from a staffing company?
Right. So let's say if something as simple as employee benefits. Right? Now, obviously, as a principal employer, I would provide employee benefits, but I would be constrained in the options and variety of benefits that I can provide, which will be subject to a common minimum that I provide at my organization. But given that as a staffing partner, you would have a much higher base, right? And does it give you a leeway or a leverage to provide more differentiated benefit options? That's one. Engagement, right? I would certainly need to measure my pulse on engagement basis, the work that they do. But would your scale allow you to measure or tap into employees' engagement much easily and give me then snippets that this segment is engaged, this is not, and then I can take actions. Right? So there is a lot on the employee life cycle that can be taken up by the staffing partner beyond just onboarding and offboarding.
No, completely. I think the earlier expectations of, to use your term, vanilla staffing, which is basically just onboarding and payroll administration and compliance management, etc. I think those have just become hygiene. Yeah, they are no more part of the services which are expected from staffing companies. And I think your point just resonates with that pulse that we are able to get from the client's expectations as well. So I think thanks for elaborating on that second point of yours. I think the first point sourcing was pretty straightforward. The second point, I think, as you rightly said, yes, by the sheer volume and the diversity of clients that we work with, we would have access to a variety of employee benefits, and we'll also be able to provide them hopefully at more competitive prices as well, through the sheer economies of scale that we would be able to leverage. And we would also be able to administer them in a more efficient manner as well. I mean, that's the expectation, and rightly so. So thank you so much for clarifying that as well. So wanted to also pick your brain on being a soon-to-be giant in the industry. What are the new strategic initiatives that Unibic Foods is taking for generating new opportunities and employment in India? Because there is a lot of initiatives going on. There is a lot of push from the government side as well. So is there anything differently that you're looking to do? I understand that some of this could actually be confidential company strategy as well, but if you could just share what you can share, then that will be very helpful for us as well and for the audience.
I think we've already adopted the existing talent options. We are partnering with the third party staffing providers. We are looking at, and we're not just looking at it as a staffing solution. We are looking at converting that into a pool of skilled workforce for us in future. So we are invested not just in letter but in spirit in initiatives like these, which I think are beneficial for industry but also for youth. But I think apart from that, as I say, the theme for us is that we'll keep growing, and hence the capacities will emerge at all ends of value chain. And we'll always be exploring how much of that would be admitted workforce, and that's where our partners would come in. So I no specific workforce strategy that I can share at this moment, but I think we are, it will mirror the company's growth for sure.
Yeah. No, understood. See, one other trend that, last but not the least, this question from my side is to do with formalization of the workforce. So we could see that in India, while roughly about 50 to 55 crores is the number of people who are actively engaged in the workforce in India at this point in time. But unfortunately, just around 11 or 12% of this is part of the formal workforce, right? And close to 90% are informal, right? And a lot of these people, of course, let's keep aside the agriculture related workforce, but if you look at the other two sectors in the economy, which is manufacturing and services, even in the manufacturing space, a lot of a bulk of the workforce, in fact, which is based out of say factories or warehouses, etc., are not really part of the formal workforce. And there is also a lot of people who work in the sales and distribution channels as well, who are again not part of the formal workforce as well. Now, these employees might not directly be part of the workforce of organized players such as you, but they are still part of the entire value chain, right? They are somewhere there in the value chain for sure. And one trend that we've been seeing in the past, say, a few years, I think ever since the onset of COVID, maybe it acted as an accelerator, is that there is a lot of companies looking to formalize this workforce in some way or the other, right? What is your formalizing in the sense it could be by maybe directly taking them on their own roles, or maybe giving them a contract employment, or which is a bi-party contract arrangement, or it could be through a third party as well, right? So what is your take on this whole thing? Do you really see that this is the way to go for us in the future, or the cons outweigh the pros? What is your take on this, Chandra?
I think the way we are progressing forward in terms of opportunities in the formal sector, the compliances that have been built in both from indirect taxation as well as labor law compliances, it is inevitable that the formalization would increase, and I think it's a welcome step, because there is a certain amount of social security, there is a certain amount of guarantee that comes in for the workforce that enters into the formal space. So I think for the workforce, it is certainly positive. I think for employers, I mean, we at Unibic ensure that our entire value chain, there is compliance in letter and spirit, even through our partners, who may not be directly providing us manpower, but even with partners, we would assume the role of a principal employer and ensure in spirit. But if I talk about formal sector in general, I think it is important for organizations to assume that role. Let me use that word: assume that role of a principal employer and ensure that compliances are in spirit and not just in letter, right? Because you could say, employees with me or with my third party, everybody is, let's say, for instance, PF registered, ESI registered, but hey, that's a vendor, and ultimately their lookout. But I think taking that responsibility to ensure that you nudge and sometimes crack the hammer and say we would only work with a partner if the compliances are there, building it in your governance and your audit processes. I think that will go a long way in ensuring that even those allied partners and vendors eventually become compliant. So, and I think it's happening. I think it will happen because increasingly non-compliance has also a burden that is a big business risk even for these small enterprises. So in a way, it will naturally happen, but I think it's also incumbent upon the formal sector to take up as a moral responsibility to push it even more. We certainly at Unibic do that with our partners.
Yeah. No, wonderful to hear that you are very optimistic about that, because in a country like ours, that initiative is important, and as you rightly said, the onus is on the formal employers to assume the role of principal employer. As you rightly said, it's a very bold step, though. It is expensive not just from a cost perspective, but also from a compliance liability perspective as well. It's not really something that is an easy decision to make, but great to hear that you as a professional are optimistic about that, because that is the only way in which I believe that as you said, to your point again, by imparting better social security benefits to the workforce, you will also be able to get more from them eventually, right? So that's the sense we've been getting from the market, and it's great to see that your thoughts are also in the same direction. So that's about it from my side, Chandra. Would love to hear some closing comments from your side as well.
Lovely interaction. Those are some very sharp questions that forced me to also look at our talent strategy and also for our contingent workforce. I think I echo your sentiment that the formalization would increase, and I think it's for the benefit of the millions of workforce that we have, as much as also for the formal workforce. So I think the next 4-5 years is going to be very exciting in this space, and I think partners like you, organized partners like you, help in that transition much more. So we look forward to continuing our engagement with your ambition.
Lovely to hear that. Thank you so very much for your comments and for your time, importantly, Chandra. looking to interact more with you in the future. Thanks so much once again.
Thank you for having me. Lovely interaction.